Hey, hello, I'm Wren Ribeiro, and I want to connect with you about peace and justice. We are interviewing women who labor for peace, as we have forever and always will, until we all feel peace in our homes, our workplaces, our communities, and especially our bodies and minds. This initiative is named Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace. It's a show of intimate conversations with justice workers who are healing their self and communities from the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change. Welcome to the show. My name is Wren Ribeiro, and I wish you complete wellness and lasting peace. Today, we'll get to meet Mary McClintock, a woman who has dedicated her life to social justice in the form of access to housing and food and spaces for lesbian connection. She's a writer and has also kept a vigil for peace for over 20 years. Let's do some mindful breathing and a heart check-in. My heart is feeling really worn out and tired and needing a bit of joy. How is your heart? Let's take a nice deep breath together and get into episode 16. Mary McClintock.
Mercury in retrograde, gotta love it.
We are once again having an intimate conversation about healing the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change, because the first conversation was not recorded. Oh my goodness.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Well, clearly this is something one could talk about for a long time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, we did a heart check-in in the beginning. And do you want to check in again, or maybe just say a word about how this one?
Yeah, I think, curious, intrigued, and yeah, and hope changes everything, which is a line from a Emma's Revolution song, and which I, think about a lot, as hope is a way. Yeah, hope.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Well, I want to begin and sort of introduce you as an unsung heroine, because you received an award with the same name, or by the same name, in 2019 by the Mass Commission on the Status of Women. And did you say that that was a new name, or
No, the name of the organization has remained the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. They used to do an annual Unsung Heroine Award, and now I think they've changed it to something like Commonwealth Heroine Awards or something. I think they took out the unsung part. But at that time, that's what it was. And it's an award where state representatives and state senators nominate a woman from their constituency who is doing something that they want to recognize, and they make this award, and there was a whole event at the State House, and with all these amazing women from all over the state who, we heard very brief introductions about each, and had this whole booklet with all this. And I remember listening and saying, oh, I want to talk to her. Oh, I want to talk to her, because there was a lot of really powerful work being done. I think it's a real testament to the power of individuals working in community to make things happen. And it's actually in the category of hope changes everything. It really, it was very hopeful. And okay, there are all these women doing all this great stuff. Yeah, I was torn today. It's like, do I wear hope changes everything, or do I wear cultivate lesbian joy t-shirt? But I chose hope today. So
I love it. I love it. It's kind of, for me, a mashup of Joanna Macy's Act of Hope and Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything. It's just like Act of Hope changes everything. Love it.
Yeah. Yes. Hope.
Right.
Hope changes everything.
You've noted so many ways in which you weave networks together, and that is one of those that you want to continue weaving.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how I met you, is through another friend. I mean, that whole networking and connections, I mean, that is really a lot of the core of my life is making connections, doing community building, being part of communities. Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, beautiful. So you have woven networks of being up for lesbian, intergenerational lesbians, for people who are food and housing insecure, to secure housing and meals.
There's a fair housing workshop on virtual via Zoom, May 8th, 6:30 to 7:30. You can beam in from anywhere, and it's about housing discrimination and knowing your rights around housing. And it's being co-sponsored by the Massachusetts Fair Housing Center and the Franklin Community Cooperative that operates Greenfields Market and McCusker's Market in Franklin County. And that will be an opportunity to not be isolated in dealing with whatever housing issues people are dealing with, to learn and to connect with other people.
Yeah. So the housing work, the peace vigil you still do on Saturdays, that's at the Commons in Greenfield.
Yeah, so we have the weekly peace vigil in Greenfield from 11 a.m. to noon on the Greenfield Common, which is the corner of Main Street and Main Street and Bank Row, 5 and 10, Route 5 and 10, next to City Hall in Greenfield. And actually now starting this Saturday through October, the Greenfield Farmers Market will be right next to that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what stories that you had shared from healing the effects of misogyny from your childhood and from your work in learning to love yourself and learning to love women would you like to retell?
Well, I mean, I think just like, all of this, that I said, one of the things I've said and what I say all the time is misogyny is in the air we breathe. We are trained from birth or before birth to hate ourselves as women, to hate other women, to diminish other women and ourselves. And that it takes, if you don't do an active sort of pushback to that, you just keep getting, and we're continually getting brainwashed about it. And so it's not like as a child I went, I need role models to be how to be a strong, powerful woman, a competent woman, but I found them. They came across my life. So there's a woman named Sally Edwards, her mother and my mother were best friends in college. And I sort of grew up with Sally like an older cousin. And she took me horseback riding for the first time when I was 9 years old. She became an incredible athlete. She is still an incredible athlete who did a lot of marathons and triathlons. She completed the Ironman triathlon 16 times. She won a race called the Western States 100, which is a 100-mile running race in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. And she early on was a hero of mine. Early on was, oh, I could be like Sally. And then I had summer camp counselors who, again, were showing me that, you could be a woman and be very skilled and capable. And I went to this environmental ed school and was like, oh, there are adults who their job is to teach kids about like how, banana slugs breathe and what is the difference between chaparral as an environment and a redwood forest as an environment. And I too maybe I could do that. So at 15, that became my career goal. I was going to be an environmental educator and outdoor leader. And I did that. I learned and I studied and I did a lot of outdoor stuff. And I did that work for my first career. And then I also, in college, I did a lot of outdoor activities with the outing club, the outdoors club with backpacking and canoeing and cross-country skiing. And then eventually I got into sea kayaking and did a lot of sea kayaking, and most of that was with women who were very capable. And so all of that was teaching me, all that was, there was the world saying women can't do this, women can't do this, women aren't good, women aren't capable, women can't do that. But then I had all those women in front of me and I was out there doing it too. It's like, oh, we can do that. We can do that.
Excellent.
Sure we can.
That's why I do this Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace show, because I meeting people like you and sharing these stories of trusting the people that we meet and trusting the embodiment of connection and letting that inform our journey is really key. You shared a story that I'd love to hear again about ways in which people in Chelsea were lining up for food, and how did they shift midstream to come up with a more equitable solution?
So at the beginning of the pandemic, there were a whole lot of people out of work because a lot of businesses shut down, where people couldn't go to work. And the whole economy was sort of in a shambles. And so there were a lot of people that didn't have food, and they were they were looking for food, and a lot of communities set up food distribution sites in the city of Chelsea near Boston. The city manager was, activated city employees, and they, somehow got food. I don't know where they got the food from. They got the food, and they were doing food distribution sites so people could come and pick up food. And the city manager was like, wow, this is a whole lot of people moving a whole lot of food around, and it's sort of creating these whole systems. And what if people just had the money? The problem is they don't have the money to get the food. And so somehow got funding from some funder, and also hooked in Harvard University researchers. And what they came up with was, instead of trying to hand people food every week, what if we gave people a $400 Visa card every month as a way to support them getting what they need in terms of food? And so they recruited, the way they found the 1,000 people to give the $400 gift cards to was going down the line with a clipboard. Would you be interested in this? And they actually signed up 2,000 people. And 1,000 were, I think it was 1,800. There were 1,000 who were actually given the gift cards, and 800 who were tracked, but who were not given any funding. Because they had limited amount of money, but they were able to see what was the situation for those. They would compare what did it mean to have 400 extra bucks a month versus not have that. And they found, and there was, this really speaks to the whole notion of guaranteed income or a universal basic income, that that everybody should have an income floor, that there shouldn't be zero as the income floor. There should be some basic amount that will cover basic stuff. And they found, and you can look up Chelsea Eats and Harvard, and you'll find the research done about it. And it is an example of, there have been a number of these kind of experiments across the US that you can see on Mayors for Guaranteed Income's website, where there have been localized attempts to provide this basic, kind of basic income. And what the city manager, it was a stopgap thing for a period of time. It did not continue for a long, real long period of time, but because it's not something that at a city level or a state level could be funded. It's at a federal level you could fund that. And that, how many billions of dollars just got voted to, for war? There's the question, whenever somebody says, well, there isn't the money for that, it's like, oh, there's plenty of money.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, war and I've been a peace activist for decades, and war is war, misogyny, capitalism, climate change, war, particularly war perpetrated by the US or supported by the US, absolutely negatively impacts women all over the world, and within this world is part of
violence against women is
reinforcing power over. Capitalism, follow the money, money that the taxpayer dollars from the US that are given to another country to support their military is actually giving them money to buy weapons from us,
Exactly.
from the companies. So that's capitalism. And climate change. When I look at pictures of bombed out places all over the world, and a lot of those bombed out places include a whole bunch of concrete buildings, buildings that are made with concrete. Concrete is one of the major climate change impactors in terms of greenhouse gases. And so if you're gonna, there's your dog. If you're going to, if you're gonna rebuild those places, that's producing more concrete, that's producing more greenhouse gases.
Yes.
So yeah, ending war would go a long way to, really go a long way to all those issues.
I wonder what gives you hope in terms of the political will for change. Where is the hope that changes everything?
I think the hope is people taking action. I think the hope is people who are like, no, this isn't fair. No, I don't want this to be this way. So I'm going to do something about it. And I'm going to do something about it to some extent individually, but I'm really going to have more impact if I do it collectively with others. So hope is, is finding each other, finding who is doing stuff. I mean, one of the things about, so I did in 2002, September 2002, 3 other women and I created what became the weekly Greenfield Peace Vigil, which has happened every Saturday since September 2002 on the Greenfield Common.
Continually.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so enduring.
Every week. Oh, it's not the oldest peace vigil around here, but it is and in that, every Saturday since through bad weather and pandemic and whatever. I mean, haven't made it didn't make it as much during the pandemic and during periods of health issues, but every week there's every Saturday. And part of that, what is standing on a street corner holding a sign that says peace is cheaper do for the world? And how does that impact the world? Well, let me tell you, we've started zillions of conversations in cars driving by. And one of the things is that that place, the, town common is a place to go say your piece about whatever.
Yeah.
And we're findable. If people are like, well, people come up to us, well, I was trying to find somebody who's working on this issue. Do you know if somebody is working on this issue? And if you get, anywhere from 4 to 100 or however many people standing around on a street corner for an hour, some people like doing a silent vigil, but a lot of us do the chatty form of vigil. And we have organized all kinds of other events and all kinds of other activities and been and this bill is in the legislature and we should all make sure we do something about that, or the Connecticut River is in Northfield. The Northfield Pump Storage Station project is messing up the Connecticut River. Let's take action on that. Whatever, it's been a hub of activism and of organizing. And
wow.
The ripple effects, we never know. We never know what all the ripple effects are. But there's a story that I think about all the time, that during the Vietnam War, there was a group called Mothers Against the War or something. There was a mothers group that was protesting the Vietnam War, and they had a regular vigil in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. And so there was a group of women standing out in the rain in this vigil, and Benjamin Spock, the prominent pediatrician, was driving by, and he had been thinking that he needed to speak out against the Vietnam War, but he didn't really know, well, what he was going to do. And he drove by and he saw these women. Well, if they can stand out in the rain, then I can do something about this. And he became a prominent spokesperson against the war. Now, those women had no idea that they were having that impact, but they were just putting it out there. And that's a story that actually comes from Rebecca Solnit's book, Hope in the Dark. She talks a lot about hope and the power of hope. And so I think about that when I've been standing out with like a half a dozen people under our umbrellas in the pouring down rain at the vigil. Like, we don't know what the impact of this is going to be. But with what Rebecca Solnit talks about hope, she talks about if you're an optimist or a pessimist, you already know what's going to happen. If you're an optimist, it's going to be great. If you're a pessimist, it's going to be bad. And so you don't have to take any action because it's already, you know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But with hope, you don't know what's going to happen. So you can take action to try and influence it.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not the listening is to what drives us to sit out there with the umbrella, or stand out there with others. It's not about the impact that we may or may not have with however many people. That's not our business, right? And that took a long time for me to understand that. I kept wanting this like direct feedback. You know, if I put information out this way, I want information back. Or if I put, you know, my time and energy in this way, I want, you know, income back this way. And when that was one of the most liberating things I ever understood. The other is all time is my time. My time to choose what I want to do and how I want to think and feel. But that was so liberating because it will come back in a different direction, from a different direction, in a different form, and trusting that those streams of income, the coming in, are what nourish, and looking a little bit differently or more broadly at how our souls are nourished, or how our lives have meaning, is something to certainly have hope in, and
Right.
and something that we can regulate, co-regulate, especially.
Right.
Wow, I'm
Right.
so glad that I didn't catch that in the first conversation. I'm so glad that I know that about you now. This is our first time or today of meeting each other in face to face or virtually, and there's so much I don't know about you, but it's just like full of gratitude for the work that you have done in all of these realms.
Right.
What else would you like to share about the healing of misogyny, of climate change, and of capitalism?
And one of the things I would say is, again, about the lesbian organizing I do, and particularly intergenerational lesbian organizing. I mean, one of the things that also gives me hope is, you know, having some perspective over time that there have been, you know, that somehow there have been lesbians finding each other throughout time, and that for young lesbians that I know today, there's a lot of concern about, well, how do I find older lesbians? How do I find those role models? How do I find somebody who, you know, it's like, how can I imagine my life going forward if you're being told that it's bad to be a lesbian, if you're told that you shouldn't be like that and really you should just get interested in boys, or that then if you get told that, or if that message is coming to you, it really helps to see, well, wait a minute, there's that old lady over there, and she's a lesbian, and she's pretty happy, and she's like having a good life. So I could be doing that too. You know, that could be me. I've had young women say to me, until they had met me and a group of women that, you know, we were part of, they couldn't, you know, they're like in their early 20s, that they could not have imagined their lives as, you know, like that you could live a life as a happy lesbian for the, you know, however long. And so that has become a real passion of mine, of being visible. One of the things I think you noticed in an early looking into stuff about me, is one of the things I've done the last couple of years is organize a lesbian visibility, positivity, cultivate lesbian joy contingent at the Franklin County Pride Parade that is happening this year on June 15th. And a group of us, you know, from age 20 something, I'm thinking about who was there, 20 something to 70 something, walking down the street with signs saying, you know, lucky to be lesbian, lesbian then, now, forever. I have a sign that says still lesbian after all these years on one side, and on the other side it says someone was brave before me, I walk in her path.
Mm.
And we have, you know, and we're just having a good time. And I've had a lot of people cheer, and a lot of people come up to us and say, you know, I'm so glad to, you know, meet you, and can I take your picture? And so a friend of mine is actually helping me create a banner now, this big banner that says cultivate lesbian joy. And we'll be carrying that in the parade this year. But that making connections, finding others, you know, like part of what gives you hope is I'm not alone in this. I'm
Yeah.
not alone in, you know, misogyny, capitalism, climate change are all huge, challenging issues. And individually by myself, if I were just trying to, you know, like push back or like function in that world,
And yeah, it's, you can't individually. Yeah.
yeah, it'd be hard. But with community, then there's support, then there's collectively we can do things. There's a great poem by Marge Piercy called The Low Road. Check out that poem that
Okay.
talks about the power of working together.
Nice. Well, you've got a lot of beautiful resources that that you must call on to keep yourself nourished and
Yes, right. I mean, that's virtual community. That it's, I mean, not just virtual community like a virtual meeting like this, but the reading. I've never met Rebecca Solnit, but her words resonate with me. I've never met Alice Walker, but her, you know, activism is my rent for living on this planet, kind of that quote.
Yeah.
You know, those are things that inform my life and inform who I am and what I do in the world all the time.
Nice. Yeah, holding that, holding one another in that way virtually in our hearts, in our moments of darkness when things come out of balance is particularly hard for me. I was thinking about that. I said to a previous show guest about living from the heart being a revolutionary act, and this guest was not quite resonant with that and felt lucky to not be resonant with that. And I think a lot of it has to do with unhealed trauma, and then me choosing to go into capitalism, in banking, to try to make change from within as a single individual without community. I mean, that was just the silliest thing I could have done. It was soul crushing. And then pulling myself out, extricating myself from the policing and enforcing of patriarchy, and choosing different is that celebration. And I'm still learning how to celebrate with and hold the sangha of community in my heart on the regular, you know, on the day to day. So this particular show and interviewing folks like you is what I'm doing to heal myself, and I'm hoping that others can relate and heal thyself that way. Because Alice Walker to me feels like the grandmother of healing. She's just like that embodiment of the archetype of mother.
Right. I think when you're saying, you know, like the resistance to living from the heart, it's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to have your heart open. It's scary not to have all the walls up. It's scary not to, you know, and to how will you be received? How will you be okay? All of that. And so finding other people, you know, for me, you know, finding a lot of lesbians who I can be in community with and be myself in that way, and, you know, share together in that heart healing. Yeah.
Yeah, be safe, trust, you know, in those yeah, tight communities. Ah, wow.
Yeah.
One of the things we didn't talk about is the class issue, and it's inherent in so much of what you're talking about with housing and food insecurity. But the confluence of white and class, do you have thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I grew up upper middle class and had, you know, upper middle class in suburbia in the US and that is a very privileged position in terms of the country, in terms of the US and in terms of the world.
Yeah.
And part of my activism comes from trying to use the power that I have, basically through that privilege, to take apart that privilege, to do that. And absolutely that has been, you know, when I think of my work, I mean, I'm somebody who perhaps could have taken a life path that was focused on climbing up the capitalist tower, you know, and, you know, climbing up and using my privilege, you know, and not just using my privilege, but sort of capitalizing on my privilege. And I have tried to use that privilege in terms of class and race to undermine capitalism, to undermine patriarchy. Yeah, and I do that that's very intentional.
That level of reciprocity is something that if we all cultivate, we can heal all these effects of these pervasive societal ills, because they hurt everybody.
And when I think about, actually the thing we hadn't talked about is climate change. And when I think about climate change, it is a direct result of the power over patriarchal capitalist world. The earth Susan Griffin wrote a great book called Woman in Nature and made the whole parallel between how women are treated and how nature is treated, how the earth is treated, and that separation from like nature is out there and we're here, and that sort of that distancing.
There the twain shall meet, right? No, we have
to that we aren't nature, that we aren't part of the earth. Yes.
Well, Mary, I am going to be closing out the season of Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace next month or so. But then I'm going to be coming back next year, and I really hope to have you back. I hope hope in the change that everything will be moving moving along in our collective wellness and lasting peace.
Great.
As it shall.
Great.
Wow. Mary McClintock, thank you so much for joining again today.
Thank you.
I look forward to meeting you in person, either at the parade or somewhere soon.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I am Wren Ribeiro, and I thank you for joining. This initiative is named Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace. It's a show of intimate conversations with justice workers who are healing their self and communities from the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change. This initiative is supported by Inner Fortune, the full-life self-coaching journal that is now digital. Join us for peace, and thank you for your heart.